Because all of the evidence of what was just bombed by 12 30,000-pound bombs is buried under a mountain, devastated and obliterated.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth pushing back firmly on any suggestions that the U.S. strikes fell short. He insists Iran's nuclear weapons infrastructure was obliterated.
Those that dropped the bombs precisely in the right place know exactly what happened when that exploded. And you know who else knows? Iran.
But there are conflicting narratives. Just how much was actually destroyed? That depends on who you ask. Now a new alarm bell. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, the United Nations nuclear watchdog, says more than 400 kilograms, nearly 900 pounds of enriched uranium in Iran is unaccounted for. So was this a turning point, or just a pause in Iran's nuclear ambitions? To help us break this down, we're joined by Olli Heinonen, former Deputy Director General of the IAEA and one of the world's top experts on Iran's nuclear program.
One should not relax, because this material as such is enough for about 10 nuclear weapons if it is enriched further to 90%.
I'm Negar Moshahedi, and this is Eye for Iran. Olli Heinonen joins us now, the former Deputy Director General of the IAEA and someone who has tracked Iran's nuclear activities for decades. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. President Trump entered NATO, projecting triumph. Do you see it that way, or does the threat of a nuclear Iran still remain?
Unfortunately, there is still a threat which is remaining, but I explain why I say so. In a big picture, if we look at the devastating strikes in Fordo, Natanz or Isfahan, major capabilities to produce fissile material for civilian and nuclear weapons purposes have definitely stopped, as the major places where those materials can be converted, for example, to uranium metal or nuclear weapons components. Those have been destroyed and will take a long time for Iran to recover those locations. That's for sure. But at the same time, there is a word of caution. As we remember, Iran had more than 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium when this hostility started. Actually, it should be now somewhere 450 kilos or so, because the facilities continued to operate after IAEA report in the end of May. Where is that material is the first question. Foreign Minister Araghchi said, was it on 12th or 13th of June, that they plan to move it to a secure place. Where it was taken, I don't think we know. Intelligence may know. But before IAEA has verified that this material has been put back under the IAEA control, one should not relax, because this material as such is enough for about 10 nuclear weapons if it is enriched further to 90%. Then someone may ask, but they were just wiped away, these enrichment plants, so why to worry? One has to worry, because such kind of installation which can convert this material in a matter of days for the first weapon needs about 1,000 centrifuges only. It's just a normal workshop, if you look at it from the satellite imagery, about the size what has been the above ground pilot fuel enrichment plant in Natanz. Not a big building. And it would be very difficult to find, because it can be concealed among other technical buildings in any industrial site or warehouse complex. So until people know that there is no such installation and that the material has been accounted for, the threat is there. So in a big picture, yes, Mr. Trump was correct, but it should have had this caveat telling that it's not yet over.
So for this unaccounted, over, you said 900 pounds of enriched uranium, and unaccounted not knowing where it is, with that, how long then in terms of the process of weaponization, would it take for the Iranian regime to be able to produce a nuclear weapon?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's take the worst case scenario and think that they have somewhere hidden 1,000 centrifuges, which we don't know. They are of this IR6 type. It's not a big facility. Centrifuges, they have enough. They could have done this already months ago and set it up for a rainy day. So such a facility is needed, and then you need this material. You need about maybe 40, 50 kilograms for the first weapon. You pass it through this enrichment process. It's a matter of days when you have it as a weapons grade material. But then you still don't have a weapon. You need to take this high enriched uranium, convert it to uranium metal, make it to proper shape, machine it. And since it's a highly critical material, you need to work with the fairly small batches in controlled conditions. So it will take all this about 1 month.
That's it?
According to the IAEA standards, from start to have the weapon components on your hand. But then comes the question, what about the rest of the weapon? If they have done that, what Mr. Salehi was alluding a bit more than a year ago, that, if everything is already on the shelf, electronics, high explosives, etc., then 1 month, 6 weeks, the first weapon is there in such kind of scenario.
Just 6 weeks away.
Yes, if it exists. Yeah, but now we have to think a little bit more cautiously also at this time. There has been a lot of military strikes. Has the infrastructure, we have seen that some people have been getting killed, but this is not really the leadership of the weapons program, so to say. Where are the people who are those who actually process that material, assemble that material? They are technicians, they are engineers, they are people who get their hands dirty with this material. Are they still available? If they are available, then this scenario, those speaks for a first weapon, are in principle possible. Does intelligence know those people? Does intelligence know where they are? At this point of time, I think that the way I see the Israeli announcement, the US serious announcements, they are working to find out those. And important at this point of time is that the IAEA can enter quickly, verify where this high-ended uranium is, because if they find all that, I think that then we can a little bit relax in such a scenario.
But if, let's say, the Iranians don't cooperate with the IAEA now, is there any way to be able to track where this uranium is?
Only intelligence. There is no magic detector which you fly around and say, okay, it's there. No. Intelligence, IAEA, and Iran's cooperation. If Iran wants to prove that they have the material, why to hide it? If they have no intention to use it, why to hide it? So I think that next 1 week or so is, in that sense, very important. And I'm sure, US has set up certain requirements for that meeting, which is planned to be taken next week to that end.
You also, in your recent answer, you walked us through the process of weaponization. And thank you. You did it in non-technical terms where I was able to understand it. Can you tell us, in terms of these US and Israeli strikes, what parts of the chain of the process of weaponization did it actually take out? You mentioned, for example, a lot of more low-level people like engineers, et cetera, not necessarily the high-end nuclear scientists, weren't necessarily taken out and could potentially be available. What other, in terms of the process, in chain of events, did it actually take out that would hinder their efforts?
I think that it take out much of the uranium large-scale enrichment, which produces new nuclear material like Natanz, Fordo, Isfahan. We don't know how the bombing proceeded in the supply chain. Did they also hit, let's say, facilities in Yazd or Ardakan or Sagan, where actually uranium ore is made? But it takes time. Let's assume that they didn't do it. It takes time before this material is in the form of uranium hexafluoride, because Isfahan was badly destroyed. There will be no new uranium hexafluoride anytime soon. But here comes the question again. Is it possible that Iran also was moving some of those raw materials away from Isfahan in order to protect them? We don't know. Intelligence may know. So these are the questions. Then getting to the nuclear weapon itself and the production chain, it needs a lot of things: electronics, high explosives, to mention some of them, missiles, to some of them. How those were destroyed? We see that many missile places were attacked. We don't know what happened with necessary production of high explosives like HMX and RDX, which Iran has. It has small production facilities. I take that by definition, those probably have been attacked because they are greatly known. But here comes the same problem. What if they have moved some of those materials to be stored in some secret place? Those need to be certified and fined. And I think it is important at this point of time, if Iran really wants to come clean from this, the scope of the IAEA inspections will be expanded to also to confirm absence of those nuclear weapons related activities, which IAEA has not really been able to address on ground. It has a number of questions, but Iran has not been able or provide the adequate answers. But that means that there needs to be an agreement between Iran and the other parties that, for example, IAEA, or it can be from a special group of people under the UN Security Council, it doesn't matter who it is, as long as the expertise is there, to a certain absence of those. But this is a major undertaking, and to convince Iran to do it will take some efforts.
And you mentioned Natanz and Esfahan and the fact that potentially they could have moved it to other locations, because there are other locations. And Natanz and Esfahan, or sorry, I should say Natanz and Fordo started out as, secret, and then later they were found out about it and it was discovered. So do you suspect, given that pattern and history of Iran and its nuclear activities, do you suspect that potentially there could be other secret locations?
Until now, as you said, history has shown. Iran started to work with uranium metal in early 1990s in secrecy and intelligence to IAEA. Did it some in Isfahan, some of them in Tehran. Never disclosed it to the IAEA until we found it at a later date. Then in early 2000s, when the E3 agreement entered the force, the suspension agreement, once on the second year, 2004, Iran started the construction of Fordo, which original design, as the documentation which we have published with David Albright, shows that it was clearly designed from the very beginning to produce high-enriched uranium and not low-enriched uranium for civilian purposes. And it was even too small for a bulk production of low-enriched uranium, which Natanz was actually better designed with 2 large enrichment halls. So there is this history of concealment, and I think that one has to be careful in accepting explanations. And I think that it's important now for Iran. This is a golden opportunity to open a new page on the book and come clean with these old things. They will not get penalized on that because if it is history, it will be, if it is still existing, it will be dismantled, and the life goes on like it has gone in South Africa.
And there are reports that much of Iran's uranium stockpile was stored in deep ultra tunnels in Isfahan that are even go deeper than Fordo. Those sites were not on the target list. Does that undermine the operation? And why do you suppose it wasn't on the target list? And what does it say of Iran's nuclear capabilities then?
Well, let's wait first facts. We don't have facts what comes to the Isfahan. Isfahan has actually several underground locations if you go back in a history and look from the open satellite imagery how the site has been built. But I can see from the satellite imagery now available that the major tunnels which are there in this nearby mountain were attacked heavily. What happened inside, we don't know. So I think, and I don't know how much IAEA have been recently there. We went there, before 2010 and before JCPOA, but I don't know whether they have been to which extent since then they have been visited, because IAEA doesn't report those because they do it with a complementary access if they did it. So we don't know whether they have been doing anything there. But then there are some smaller locations which could be useful for activities related small-scale enrichment or storing some materials like centrifuges or even enriched uranium. And then there is another part which people have to also to look the history. We talk a little bit about the history, but there are several installations in, for example, in Isfahan area. There are also in Mashhad and elsewhere, which were part of the Atomic Energy Organization program particularly in 2000s. What has happened with those workshops? Have they been attacked? Some fabrication plants have been attacked, I see from the satellite imagery. But whether the small installations which were belonging either to the Atomic Energy Organization under some private name or Revolutionary Guards, have those smaller places also attacked? This is the question. And what has taken place in those places in recent year? I don't think that the IAEA has been able to address that part of the problem. And then you have similar installations in the wide area of Tehran, some in Semnan, and certainly places in Parchin, but that's probably in a very tight focus. And all this one at the very end comes that how well the foreign intelligence has been able to intrude to Iranian communication systems to find the places and the people. And that one they will not tell in public, I'm sure. Not Iran and not the counterparts.
Sounds like there's a lot yet to be determined before a real full assessment of just how much damage has been done, right? And Iran also recently informed the IAEA of a new underground enrichment facility. They described it as a heavily secured location. And the IAEA was, according to my knowledge, was set to inspect that in the near future. But that also allegedly was not a hit in one of the strikes. What does that tell you that the new site was not reportedly on the target list?
Let's find facts first. What was the new site? Can anyone tell? Was it enrichment? Was it the storage? Was the storage of centrifuges? Was it the assembling of centrifuges? I think that the purpose needs to be estimated. But at the end, if Iran has said it in public that they have such an installation, I think that IAEA should visit it. If Iran denies it existing after those statements, I think that some of the intelligence forces may be able to help IAEA to find the location. Estimate by now about 440 or 50 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. Was it damaged? Or is it all still there? and IAEA have an access to that. That's the starting point of this major additional investigation.
Now, from your experience with the IAEA, how would you, what's your assessment in terms of your feeling or your reaction to the strikes? Was this necessary? Was this needed? Was it successful? I know, like you said, there's still more information that needs to come out before you make a full assessment, and there's more facts that you need to take a look at. But based on the information you have right now, what is your assessment overall?
Well, I think that I will wait for facts. I'm not, this is first of all, it was a political decision, but most importantly, it was a risk assessment. If we don't stop it now, this program goes further and it will be more difficult to stop, in particular if Iran gets a nuclear weapon. Are the facts true? That one, I think that these investigations will tell, so I don't take a position. But I simply see it as a serious risk assessment and political decision. It's time to do it. That's it. And as a technical people, I participate to the assessment of the actions which will be taken now from here on. Are they adequate? Do they really drill to the bottom of this program, as we did it, for example, in South Africa? I hope that it will be like that. And then if it was a mistake, if it wasn't there, then that's the fact of life.
And given your background as a former deputy director of the IAEA, you dealt directly with the Iranian officials, obviously, as you mentioned, before the Iran nuclear deal, before the JCPOA. What is your take and your own experience with the Iranians? What was it like, and what lessons have you learned that can hold true today?
First of all, never ever give up. Wait until you have an answer to the questions which you judge being technically viable. Prove, corroborate the information from several sources. If one country walks to your office and say, look, there's a very bad building over there in Natanz and you should go there. Yes, I may want to go there, but I will look first, what is the actual technical reason to go there? You cannot roam around in the country of 90 plus million people, every home, and open the door and see if the centrifuges are there or nuclear material. You need to be focused, and you need to be technically sound, and you need to be able to justify your actions. But you don't need to spill all details out also in the public. This is part of the investigative effort, that you keep something in your pocket in order to corroborate the information which you get, for example, from Iran or from Iran's adversaries. So it's a complex way of doing information analysis. And this is what IAEA is designed to use and has great extent been doing that.
And when you look at the satellite images of Natanz and of Fordo, what do you see? Do you see complete and total destruction? What is your assessment from a technical point of view?
Well, it is obvious that those places will not operate anytime soon. The good news is that it's not an environmental hazard outside of the perimeter of those places. Both of them are Isfahan, Fordo, and Natanz are not in the proximity of the civilian population. And they were handling mainly materials which are not very volatile, so it doesn't travel with the winds like an accident at a nuclear power plant where you have a lot of gaseous radioisotopes. All this uranium which was there deposits practically on that place. It's under the rubble, much of it, or in the tunnels. Certainly it's a hazard for the people. Also IAEA inspectors, they need to have a protective clothing. They need to have gas masks, gloves, and careful monitoring, but it's not a hazardous job for them to do. The only hazard is there. I see two big problems. buildings may collapse. They are not very solid structures anymore after this bombing. And then, like what we had in Iraq in 1991 after the first Gulf War, there could be some unexploded ordnances among the rubble. So there has to be very special measures when you go there. You need to have ordnance removal experts with you to be on the safe side, even though if they have used, these bunker busters or other, you need to be prepared for the worst. And you need special skills, and IAEA inspectors don't have now those, but we use them in other fora. So I think that the IAEA can get the necessary support from member states. And ultimately, it is certainly the responsibility of Iran to provide the safe passage for the IAEA inspectors. But you may want to have a guy or two with you who communicate with the Iranian experts on the situation and assess it together.
And in your role and capacity with the IAEA, what is your advice to the rest of us? Like, what should we be watching out for? Or what are you watching out for in the days, in the weeks, and the months to come now?
I watch on the actions of Iran. Do they now let the IAEA to do its job without any constraints? That's the most important. And this is the truth-telling test, because there's no reason to resist. If this is a civilian program, why to restrict IAEA's work? It's a very simple question. That is the most important. And then the second is that the IAEA has to get this additional, members to the investigation, maybe not from day one, but once they have done the basic stock, for example, confirm the presence of the high-enriched uranium and whether anything is missing from that. Because if something is missing, it could have been just destroyed or it had been by purpose removed. So this is an important moment also, that what kind of measures are taken after that, what kind of investigations are launched. But IAEA has done it before, so I'm sure they will get to the right path.
And as we mentioned at the start of the podcast, as the Trump administration is projecting, a big win and triumph here, so are the Israelis as well. What is your biggest concern right now?
First of all, it's a major blow to the nuclear program, and particularly for the weapons program. But there are unanswered questions, and they pose a risk, uncertainty, and they can be also used to threat. Say, look, by creating this uncertainty that you don't know whether there is enough high-enriched uranium for nuclear weapons, suitable for nuclear weapons production, or nuclear weapons is missing, you need to be worried.
And the Trump administration is denying preliminary leaked alleged intel that these strikes set the Iranians back a few months. The Israelis are saying it set the Iranians back a few years. What do you feel is the correct assessment here?
This is a continuous process, and it should not be politically tainted. And I hope that the intelligence organization, I know many of these people over the years, they are dedicated, honest, technical people. They know that their future depends also from the correct analysis. So they are not taking any of these messages politically. But certainly then the overall conclusion, there are other people who come on the top to this, and they may offer somewhat different interpretations. So I think that it's good to be calm, wait for the facts, wait what the IAEA comes with, and perhaps provide additional resources and authorities to the IAEA to shed light to that part of the program which could have been related to the weapons and how far it has gone and where it is today.
And do you have any final thoughts? Anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to get out there?
No, that was the final thought.
Thank you so much. That's Olli Heinonen joining us today on Eye for Iran. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
If you like this episode, hit the like button. Also, leave us a comment. We'd love to know what you think. The Eye for Iran podcast series is brought to you by Iran International, your go-to destination for expert Iranian news in both Farsi and English. For more, head to our dedicated English website, iranintl.com/en.